Joe, Texas A&M takes on the Missouri Tigers this weekend, and I'm going to continue to tell everybody this. That people think I'm already crazy. Joe, this is one of the better matchups that we have of the season. I don't care what anybody tells me.
I don't know about season, but it's definitely the best matchup of the week.
Let me tell you why it is. Because if Missouri goes halfway through the year 6-0, we got to really start looking at them as a playoff contender. We really do. And the second part in this is, if Texas A&M wins, what's the narrative surrounding Mike Elko being 5-1? I think that this has lots of ramifications on it, and this is going to be a big-time matchup in College Station.
I disagree a little bit. I mean, I'm not trying to poo-poo. I'm not trying to poo-poo the game, but the reason why I disagree is that I don't think that A&M is going to finish the season strong enough to be a playoff team, because we're seeing what's happening at the top of the SEC. There's just going to be too much battling out amongst the top 4 teams.
Didn't say that they were, but what does it say?
Wait. You're right. If you pull out this win, this is a big momentum builder for Elko and Texas A&M. If you lose it, I don't think it's a massive detriment. I don't think it takes away from anything. If Missouri loses it, and it goes in line with what we talked about with Jay Crane earlier today, for anyone who missed that, go check that out. Missouri feels like that they're on a tiny bit of a fraud watch. Like they feel like they have not played up to the expectation that we have hoped for. So
Which is so wild when you look at their numbers.
Right, and we're going to get into diving into this more specifically, but just to talk about the narrative, if they lose this game, I think that plays into they are not on the playoff level like we thought that they were, and they're probably going to finish 9-3, and they're probably going to be one of those first teams on the outside looking in. Inversely, if they win, it is a momentum builder, and I think it's a bounce back point for them to start to regain some confidence and put that game like they had against Vanderbilt behind them.
You know what's interesting, Joe? Think about this for just a minute. Let's talk about Missouri, since you brought them up. They're 19th in the country in total offense. They're 3rd in the country in total defense. 5th in passing yards allowed. 19th in rushing defense. They're 7th in both third down offense and third down defense. And still, we're looking at them as a fraud.
Okay, but who did
here's
they?
Here's what I think. I mean, do you think Boston College stinks?
I don't think that they do, but they did rack up. I'm before Missouri fans get mad at me, I'm not trying to completely say that you guys stink. That's not what I'm doing.
You know what I think's happening? Can I tell you what I think's happening here? Go look at the time of possession where they're in the top 10. Joel, if you go back and look at some of these games, I am starting to question with Marcus Carroll and Noel if they're not holding on to the football a little bit more than we anticipated. Now, I look at them from a passing game standpoint. They're 37th. They have not opened it up. They have not looked like everybody thought that they would look like coming into the season. And I'm starting to question, I look at them, I see the time of possession, I see what they're doing on offense and defense, and I'm starting to ask myself the God's honest question of, okay, a lot of people are saying they're on fraud watch, but I don't know if the film necessarily shows that now.
Well, but wait, but the reason why we're saying that is because they were lumped in, and this is exactly what Jake said earlier. They were lumped in that upper category of maybe they belong in the top tier of the SEC this season. And we've seen Texas be really impressive. We've seen Georgia be really impressive despite losing last week. Alabama's been extremely impressive. Tennessee's been extremely impressive. I haven't been really impressed by Missouri. I feel like I keep seeing the mold of a good team that's not playing to its potential. That's why that narrative is being played out right now.
What's your motto on this show? Good teams do what?
Find ways to win when they're playing bad.
And they continue to do that. So listen,
but they played 5 games to this point. And
Joe, you can't do that. You can't do that. When you have Georgia and Kentucky out there and they're winning by a point, and we say good teams find ways to win, and then they look the way that they did in the first half, even though that they came back. I mean, there was Joe, let's call it what it was. There was a 6-quarter stretch where Georgia looked like the worst team under Kirby that they had ever been. Let's call it what it is.
They went to overtime with a Vanderbilt team that lost to Georgia State. I think that there's a difference between that and a Kentucky team that
they beat a Virginia Tech team that almost knocked off a top 5.
We're going down the chain of transitive property here.
This whole season has been goofy. You can't look at the first 5 weeks of this season and tell me that this hasn't been goofy. Now, here's what I'd say. You're right on the fact that they have not played up to their potential. I can't ignore that. But I look at some of the things that they've done and say, I like this, which leads me to the question. Joe, is this a week that they get that passing game rolling and they start opening things up and look like we think that they're going to look? Defensively, Joe, excuse me, they've been fine. It's the offensive woes that have been hurting them. The untimely third down misses have killed Missouri.
Well, that's where some of my fears come in with this Missouri team, because in the offseason, I talked about how I was unsure of what to expect from them on the defensive side of the football because they were replacing so much and their defensive coordinator. And they've been extremely dominant. They're stepping up into a game where they're facing off with a team that's averaging 231 rush yards per game, 5.5 yards per carry. Le'Veon Moss, Marcel Reed have been unstoppable on the ground. And to their benefit in this matchup, they are an extremely balanced defense. They're only allowing 91 rush yards per game. 2.8 yards per carry is a ridiculous number. I have faith, and I think that Missouri wins this football game because their defense is, well, I never said that they weren't going to win, but I'm just trying to.
Rudy Poo you just talked.
Because I'm going to be real. I'm not going to glaze anyone for free, man. I'm not going to do that. I don't do that at all. And I know just to quit smiling, no pause. I don't want to hear it. But I think that they win because their defense is going to be able to create the stops that they're going to need to have against Texas A&M's run game. And we don't know what Marcel Reed is like when he has to solely be a pure passer. He hasn't necessarily been called upon to do that. But where I continue to have a little bit of frustration, I think is the way to put this, is I am the most frustrated, is that this passing attack, Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Brady Cook, should be a top 5 passing offense. I don't want to hear any Missouri fans making excuses. You've played a bunch of
agree with that.
G5 nothing opponents, and you played Vanderbilt and Boston College, who's a good ACC team, and you have not shown signs of playing to that potential. You need to be a top 5 passing offense when you play Alabama to beat them. That's why I think it's considerable. No, I just finished my point. Is I think that's why they are in consideration of being pushed out of the playoff picture if they don't live up to that.
I haven't picked this game because we're talking about it on a Monday yet. Mentally, I still want to think about it a little bit more. But let me say this. Does it bother you that Missouri, this is the first real in-season road test that they'll have? And listen, before you mention that, you more than people know after witnessing in week 1 what that place is like. And Joe, I'm telling you, go look at Texas. Go look at their entire board, man. I mean, they are anticipating this game to be one of the biggest ones that they've had in a while because they have a new coach, because they have a new staff, because they're winning. Does it worry you any for Missouri that this could be a little bit of a battle?
I don't think it does. And I think that what will prevail is that they do have those premier athletes on offense. And like I have been super blown away with how explosive they've been in the run game. They have the
best 1-2 duo maybe in the SEC that nobody's talking about, Noel and Carroll.
And Noel is the one who I get the most excited watching. Like the way that he was separating against Vanderbilt was very promising. Mm-hmm. I think that those athletes are going to, better athletes prevail in situations like this. And I know that Texas A&M defense has been strong. Their front 7 is going to be really, really tough. No, I don't really have too much. I think to what we're talking about here, this is where that separation point starts to come, where they start to gain some momentum. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So I'm going to disagree with you on one thing. I would be a little worried if I'm Missouri going in there, okay? Because, look, you haven't necessarily been tested on the road the first 5 weeks of the season. And I don't think that this is a place that you're not familiar with going to, by the way. This isn't a place that you can just go in there and think that this isn't going to be a game. Now, Joe, what has A&M cleaned up since week 1? They've cleaned a lot up, and they were in a dogfight with Notre Dame. And I don't want to hear from SEC fans at the current moment, oh, well, Notre Dame stinks. I don't want to hear that. They're a really good team defensively. Joe, here's where I start worrying if I'm A&M. I love what you're doing on defense. I love that you're top 20 in the country on third down defense. I love how you've been able to stop the run. But, Joe, they're 116th in the country in passing offense. And I know that Marcel Reed and you have a Weigman has been hurt, and Marcel Reed, who I think, quite honestly, is a very explosive athlete, a very explosive quarterback. Joe, I think if this game starts going tit for tat and they got to answer score for score at any point in the game, that's what Missouri's got to make this a track meet, because there's no way in God-given hell that A&M can keep up in a track meet. That's what they got to make this. That worries me that they have not been explosive in the passing game. Now, outside of Florida, okay, at Florida, they were explosive. They look really good. Outside of that, they hadn't been. Joe, I think that both styles are matching up here. You got the 13th ranked rushing offense in Texas A&M and the 26th in Missouri. This might be one of the fastest games that we've ever seen. Both teams are going to want to run the football and play good defense. I just look at this and ask the question, in year 1 under Mike Elko, do they have all the pieces in place to beat a team that is a little bit more established with guys like Luther Burden, Brady Cook, etc.? That's the question that I have. But, man, I'm going to tell you, Colin Klein has really struggled on third down. This team has really struggled on third down. And if they can't keep drives sustained, that's where I'm starting to worry about for A&M. They're 77th in the country in third down offensive conversion rate. It's not good. Joe, they're one of the worst teams in the red zone. Not good. You can't get – I listened to Kalen DeBoer's press conference today. You know what he kept coming back to? The only thing that matters is scoring points. Only thing, yards mean nothing, points mean everything. And I just look at A&M and say, I think that you got a lot of talent all across the board. I just don't know if you're as established as Missouri. But I do, Joe, I'm going to be real with you. Here's a hot take. I think this is a 3 to 5 point game. I think it's going to be that close. I think going into that place is going to be really tough. I do think A&M plays good defense, but I think when it's all said and done, they have a Luther Burden and you don't. Now, here's what A&M fans are going to tell you. Joe, Luther Burden's yards and catches haven't necessarily come against great defensive opponents in the SEC. Can Luther Burden step up and show that he is a number 1 wide receiver in this league?
Yeah, and I don't know I don't think there's anyone can really quantify what the issue has been and why they've been slow to get going. Like it's felt really weird that Luther Burden hasn't been as productive as he was in the past. He has just been, I don't want to say non-existent, but just has not shown up to the degree that one would hope. It does, and Luther Burden tends to be that guy, though, that shows up in a situation like this, and he has his biggest game. And that's to me is the separation point. If you need a big play and it's a 2-minute drill, I'm going to Luther Burden. I'm going to Theo Weiss. Those are better receivers. There's a better receiving core on this Missouri team than Texas A&M's. And I agree with you, though. I think this game is going to be pretty close.
Think about this. Texas A&M is 64th in the country in passing yards allowed, and they played Notre Dame, who cannot throw the football. Please don't shoot me in the face, but they can't throw the football. And Joe, neither can Florida. So the two really good opponents that they faced, both teams were able to throw the football, and that might be a little bit of concern. But look, A&M had a really good game last week against Arkansas. Taylon Green's just not the guy that you need to look at and say, oh, we held them throwing the football. No, you didn't. The kid's been below a 50% passer the 2 games before he saw you. So look, man, I would lean. I'm not picking them yet. I would lean Mizzou. I think this might be a 3-point game. I think we're in for a good matchup here.
Yeah, totally agree. This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training is expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code Ruffino Joe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there.